Welcome to another Python programming lesson from Programming to Success. Today, we'll be looking at how to use classes and objects in your code. Before we start, let's quickly review what we learned in our last video. We looked at what functions are in Python, and we covered creating functions, calling functions, return statements, and some of Python's built-in functions. We also looked at some modules and some of Python's built-in modules. Now, let's get on with today's lesson. Classes and objects. Python is an object-oriented programming language. Pretty much everything you see in Python is an object. Every object has its own properties. Classes are what we call constructors for an object. You can just think of classes as a blueprint or a design. In today's lesson, you will learn to create and use classes in your code, as well as how to add objects to your classes. Our first class. We are going to create a class called things. This things class will branch further into alive and not alive sections. The not alive section will provide a specific not alive class. The alive class will branch further down. This tree diagram that I'm about to show you will make it a little easier to understand. So we will have the head class, things, and then the things class will branch into alive and not alive. Not alive will go further down into car, and alive will continue branching into animals, reptiles, and lizards. Now let's create our class called things in an IDLE file. So let's open an IDLE file. To create a class, you first use the class keyword and then the class name followed by a colon. So we say class, things, and colon because our class name is things. And then in our next line, we would say pass. The pass keyword is just telling Python that we want to create a class, but we're not giving any information as of now. We're just creating it. Parent and children classes. A parent class is a class above another class, and a child class is a class that belongs to the parent class. For example, alive is a parent for the animals class, but animals is a child for the alive class. This is how you add a child class that belongs to a parent class. You would first say the same thing, the class keyword followed by the class name, but instead you would add parentheses and specify the class that you want the child class to belong to. So, in this case, we want the alive class to belong to things. We want the alive class to be a child for the things class. So we would say class alive, then in parentheses, things. We are just saying that we want to create a class called alive that belongs to the things class. And then, like before, we would say pass because we are not giving it any information now. And we can do the same thing for the not alive class. Class not alive and things. It belongs to things. And then pass. Now we just have to do the same thing for all the rest of our classes in that tree diagram that we saw. So, as we saw, that alive class branches into animals. So, class animals, and then we want it to belong to the alive class. So, we would say alive in parentheses, and then pass. So, it works like this. We have our things class, then we created alive that belongs to things, and then animals that belongs to alive. And then for our not alive class, we had a class called car. So we would say class car, and then not alive, because we want the car class to belong to the not alive class. And pass. And then we say class reptiles, and the reptiles class belongs to the animals class. We would say that and pass. And then class lizards and reptiles, because lizards belongs to the reptiles class, and then pass. So we've created our class structure now. And now it's time to make our class structure do things. Adding functions to classes. In our previous video, we learned how to create functions. And in Python, we can also add functions to classes. To add a function to a class, instead of using the pass keyword, we would just replace the pass keyword with our function, because we are actually specifying things that we want to be a part of that class. We are giving information, so we don't need the pass keyword anymore. So now we just follow and code along. So how about we add some functions to the alive class? We can say, and we learned in our previous video how to create classes. We say def and then our function name. How about we call this function breeds? And then inside of parentheses, we pass our parameter. In this case, we want our parameter to be what we call self parameter. The self parameter basically is just one way for a function in a class to be able to call another function in that same class. So inside of parentheses for our parameter, we would just say self. That's the parameter we are passing. And now we need some code inside of the function, something to be executed when that function is called. So how about we say print breathing. When this breathes function is called, breathing will be printed out. And we can create some more functions inside of this class. We can call one move and use the same parameter, self, because the self parameter allows a function in a class to be able to call another function in the class structure. So we say def move self, because that move is the name of our function, and then we can say print moving. And how about we create one more function? We can call this def drinking water, and then self print drinking water. So we created 3 functions inside of this animals class that belongs to the alive class, and the alive class belongs to the things class. And then we can also add functions in some of our other classes. How about we add some functions to the reptiles class? We can just say def have scales, and then self like before, and then we can say print I have scales. And then how about we just add a couple functions to the lizards class? We can say def eat insect, and then self keyword, and then we can say print eat insect. How about we make this function say moving and then we eat the insect, because it makes sense to move before you reach the insect. And we can do this by calling this move function that we have in the animals class. And we can do this because we use the self keyword, which allows us for one function to call another function in the same class structure. So this function will call the move function. So right before the print eat insect part, we can say self dot move. We are using the self character because we want this function to access another function and then move, which is the name of this function. We are just calling it. So Python, when it reaches here, will jump back over here to this move class and print out moving. Then it'll return back here and print eat insect. That's what we're doing here. Okay. Now Now that we have all our functions, we need these functions to be executed, which is why we use objects. Now we will add objects to our classes. So with objects, we can make a certain function in our class structure get executed. And here's how we create an object. We say the name of our object and then equal to, but this is not an equal to in Python like we learned before. It's an assignment operator. So our object name, assignment operator, and the class we want it to belong to. So in this case, we are creating an object called Joe that is part of the lizards class. So how about we just do that? We can create an object here. We can say Joe equal to our assignment operator lizards. So now we have created the Joe object inside of our lizards class. And now, since this object belongs to this class, we can make the Joe object execute some of our functions. So we can say Joe, because that's the name of our object, Joe.move. And then when we run our code, oh, sorry, there is no colon there. We will get moving printed out because Python saw this Joe.move statement, and since the Joe object belongs to this lizard class, it'll be able to access all of the classes above it. So it'll go, when it sees the word move, it'll go up to the move function and print out moving. So now we have a class structure and we can add as many objects as we want to execute many different functions that are a part of this class structure. There's just one last topic I want to cover. When we say Joe.move, how is it able to access the move function? Because the move function is not even in the same class. Joe is an object for the lizards class, but move is a function for the animals class. The reason it's able to access that is what we call inheritance. This class over here inherits all the characteristics from the classes above it. In this case, the characteristics are all the functions. So, since the animals class is technically above the lizards class, lizards branches from reptiles, and reptiles branches from animals. So these two classes are related to each other. This lizards class would have inherited all of these functions, so it will be able to access all of them. Thank you for watching. In this video, we covered classes and objects, which are an essential part of Python programming. With this knowledge, we will be able to develop more large-scale applications. Stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you next time.